Hey guys, Scott back again with a new beer dissection video from a not too unfamiliar brewery, especially local here on Long Island, from Blue Point Brewery, Hoptical Illusion. Let me get this a little bit closer on camera, even though I'm sure I'll have it popping up on my screen a few times. Not the first beer that I've ever had by them, not my first beer that I reviewed on this channel. Blue Point Brewery, for those of you not here in the Long Island Northeast, East Coast region, I know Blue Point has a bigger footprint these days because many years ago they were a small, I don't want to call them mom and pop, but they were a craft brewery on the south of Main Street here in Patchogue, New York, and always produced very good quality beers. To this day, they still produce very good beers, but they were like kind of a smaller kind of shop, at least in my interpretation. Very big, integral in the community over there. Would host a 10-miler race in January for certain charities and things like that. So not unfamiliar. I've done videos on Toasted Lager, another IPA from them. They were bought out by AB InBev roughly 5-7 years ago. And they had moved north of Main Street near the old YMCA. It was a Briarcliff College, nice, beautiful brick building that they took over, and the new brew room, tap room. So definitely become bigger. That's not always bad being bought out, in my opinion, or my readings from other brewers, because a lot of times it influxes money into the brewery. They a lot of times will keep the same quality brewmasters, but now they have a lot more money to play with, take some gambles on some beers and things like that. So very solid. They always produce very solid beers. Now, I've never had this one today called Hoptical Illusion. Okay. I kind of got it at the same time that I got the Spectral Haze, which is another beer I've reviewed, depending on when you're watching this. This is at 7% alcohol. They call it an East Coast IPA. The best before date is May of this year, and I'm filming this at the beginning of March of 23, so May of 23. So, reasonably fresh. I like to think it's just down the road, even though I think I picked this up at a local grocery store, not a regular beer store, but this is just literally 5-10 miles from me, so it should be pretty fresh. And again, I'm not too privy on their footprint now in the United States. I know if you live in the New York area, even probably the metropolitan area, you can probably pick up Blue Point pretty easily. And I like to think over the years that they've kind of stretched out a little bit. If you do live further away and you do see Blue Point beers, even if it's not particularly this one, definitely chime in on my Facebook posts, and or you maybe you're just watching this on YouTube, because I like to know how far the reach is where the beer is being sent to. So again, always been a solid brewery, quality beers, and they have over the last several years, again, branched out with different styles. You'll see, I think they have like a pinstripe beer, which is like a lager. So they do branch out and don't just produce necessarily one style. And I always feel they're a nice, at least especially locally, a nice go-to beer to have in your refrigerator. Because everything is usually very solid. You may always find other ones out there that may be a little bit better depending on the style. But for the price point, it's always good to maybe have them on hand. And they're really not going to disappoint. They're usually, most of the styles that I've had by them are like I said, quote unquote, solid type of beers. So anyway, Blue Point Brewery, Hoptical Illusion, 7% alcohol, like I said. No other distinguishing marks on the can. They call it piney, dank, mind-bending. So I think of like West Coast IPA, not necessarily East Coast IPA. But again, some of the hop varietals are usually pretty similar to each other. They'll give like a dankness or pininess and things like that. So anyway, like the glasses, you've seen me, my typical kind of modified Spigaloo tulip glass here. Let's crack this open. Okay, like I usually do, I try to pour these off camera a little bit just so that, but I am pouring still aggressively. So I'm going to probably have a lot more head than I typically would have or would want. I usually like to try to shoot for 1-2 inches, maybe 2 finger breaths to kind of allow the aromatics from the hops and anything else in the beer coming up to the top of the glass. So let's take a look at this. Definitely a little more head than I particularly like, but that's okay. Tan, I got several inches of head here, but small, tight bubbles. It looks like that's going to persist for a little bit. My beer on my end here looking at is nice gold, pretty clear beer, almost as clear as a West Coast IPA typically is, even though they're calling it an East Coast IPA. I apologize for some of the nucleation bubbles. My glasses are usually always clean. Sometimes I'm not as meticulous for that quote-unquote beer clean glass for nice pictures, okay? But nice gold, clear beer, nice frothy white to tan head. Okay, so let's take a sniff of the aromatics here. Okay. So yeah, I'm definitely getting some light, definitely that light pine. I think I just mentioned it was on the can. Spruce tips, you shake up that Christmas tree at the holiday time and you kind of smell it. That's kind of what you get here a little bit. Obviously not as strong as that, but you kind of get that subtly. Like toast, from the malt, bread crust, maybe a little graham cracker. There's some fruit in there. I mean, there's definitely some type of fruity aromatic coming off of the hops. I wouldn't say citrus. Maybe like cantaloupe, peach. But very nice. I mean, it's still, regardless of what adjective you want to put on the aromatics, it definitely smells very good. Again, maybe a little bit, like I said, the cantaloupe, maybe white grape. But anyway, guys, let's take a swig of this thing. Cheers. Again, I get more malt definitely on the flavor. That bread crust again, light toast. Got to say though, the hops are, first of all, it's definitely some moderate bitterness, more than the Spectral Haze beer that I reviewed that was more of a New England IPA. So this definitely would fit either a West Coast IPA style, they call it an East Coast IPA, kind of moderate bitterness, moderate to probably pronounced bitterness there. So you definitely got a little bit oomph from there. This is at 7%, I believe, alcohol. So, that's just before the wheelhouse. I start getting alcoholic warmth. I don't get that. I am getting a little kind of a slight astringency on the aftertaste as I'm sitting here talking. And it kind of goes away, especially when I took that next swig there. So again, you do get a little bit of that piney, spruce tip, nut resiny. I guess there's a slight citrus fruit there too, which I get a little bit more of that grapefruit on the palate than I did on the aroma. The aroma I was kind of getting a little bit more of like a peach pineapple type of thing. But again, very nice. I mean, very good. I mean, quaffable, crushable, whatever you want to say, even at 7%. Medium-bodied, mouthfeel. Maybe there's a slight creaminess to it. But again, carbonation is kind of maybe slightly higher than kind of a medium. I kind of get that on the front end, and then quickly fleets away. So again, as I was expecting, even though I never had this particular one from Blue Point before, it is readily available here especially in the Long Island region. I think you can get it anywhere in the Northeast. I would definitely say this beer is, I give it a B- or so. And again, I hate using minuses. That's why sometimes I'm on again, off again with the grading, because sometimes it adds like a negative connotation to the beer. Only because I think you can find a lot better, they call it East Coast IPA. I'm going to call it American IPA or Pale Ale. there are a lot of other beers better out there. However, at roughly $12, $13 a six-pack versus, say, $5, $6 a can on some brews, this is a good standby to have in your beer fridge on an everyday basis, or when company kind of comes over. Again, pairings, I wouldn't probably get too exotic with pairings with this. It doesn't have that bold fruitiness that I would use on like some of my, like I always like to use Mexican, Spanish, Jamaican kind of jerk, Puerto Rican food with a lot of my IPAs, because it has a lot of fruitiness to this. This one, has a little bit more malt forwardness to it with the crust and the bread crust. Maybe some pork dishes, bratwurst. Maybe think of some German fare that you would have. If you're someone that eats veal, things like that. Light roasted meats. But again, it would go fine with barbecue. So it's not anything too exotic. Manchego cheese, maybe something a little more oomph than a ricotta and a mozzarella. Goat's milk kind of cheeses would be fine, or any other hard rind cheeses that have a little bit more pungency to it. I think this would kind of cut through with the bitterness that it does have, as well as the carbonation. But again, very solid beer, once again, from Blue Point. And that's what I said from them. I mean, you will find there are some of my local places here produce probably overall better IPAs, okay? But for a readily available, reasonably economical beer, I would have no problem recommending this or having this on standby with, house guests and things like that. And it is, again, the price point's good, and, still falls in that kind of crushable, even at 7% type of beer that you'd have laying around. So again, guys, another solid beer from Blue Point, Hoptical Illusion. Hopefully try it out. If you have other opinions on it, feel free to chime in somewhere, either on one of my social platforms. Okay, guys, till next time, have a great day. Take care.